Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Grid Talk podcast. This is the Canadian Grand Prix preview. This weekend, we head over to Canada. A bit of a weird one in the middle of the European season, but that's what we're doing. And as always, I have Wajid over here to join us. And look, he's not pixelated. It's amazing. Wajid, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, not too bad. You're looking a lot less pixelated this week.
And thanks, Virgin Media.
Well, I think you are. You just paused for a minute, but anyway.
Thanks, Virgin. Listen, let's not take this away from Virgin Media. Okay, thank you, Virgin Media.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Branson. We're obviously going to be talking about the Canadian Grand Prix in a little bit, but we are going to start off with the news, as they say, always said on Top Gear, and every other news program. Don't know why I said that. Anyway, not much has happened recently in terms of Formula One if you're not French. So we'll start with a big news story from, it's actually from Enstone, not from France, but Esteban Ocon hit out at misinformed statements and gross distortions after the Alpine crash, because obviously we had the outburst from the Alpine boss about sorting things out. But it has now been announced that he will leave the team at the end of the season. It's not that much of a surprise, is it, Wajid?
So much for that fake news. Fake news, Esteban. No, from all intents and purposes, it sounded like this was the icing on the cake, the Monaco fiasco, as shall we call it, where it was pretty much said whoever qualified in front of the other would have preferential treatment. But don't let it seem like Ocon missed the message and decided to do his own thing anyway. It's probably for the best, to be perfectly honest. I feel like the relationship between the two was becoming more and more toxic. I feel like he hasn't really kicked on from that win in Hungary, or maybe a fresh start is what he needs. To be honest, I think Renault have got to that point. Renault, Alpine, whatever the hell you want to call them, I think they've got to that point where they're at the end of the 6-7 year cycle in Formula One where they haven't won anything, no one's moved forward, so it's time to leave. So Andretti, if you're looking for a team, but no, it's probably the least surprising thing. I think if he has dreams of being in a Mercedes seat, then he needs to put down the medicinal medication he might be smoking, and because a big man, I think he ends up at either or an Audi seat.
Yeah, it's not been. You were just breaking up a little bit there, Wajid. I'm not quite sure why, but we did catch the teams you thought he might end up at. I mean, obviously, this leaves Alpine with a very strong decision to make. Do they carry on with this French super team that they enjoy with Pierre Gasly and try and bring somebody else on board? Or do they look elsewhere and maybe, there's some suspects to be considered. Obviously, a return for Carlos Sainz to the team, who is apparently favouring Sauber or Williams. Valtteri Bottas, Tsunoda, Jack Doohan, obviously, is test driver there. Mick Schumacher is there in the endurance seat. Zhou Guan Yu has former connections there as a Renault Junior. So, generally, do you see it being all changed in the Alpine pit in 2025?
No, I think it stays, and Gasly has a new teammate. Aside from that, I don't know. To be perfectly honest, who takes who wants the second seat. Really, who wants it? So it's one of those. I'm sorry, is my connection dipping in and out?
Yeah, it is a little bit.
All right, cool. Let me come back in. Give us a minute.
Yeah. So while we allow Wadjet just to sort out his connection, obviously there's been cracks in the Gasly Ocon situation from the start of all of this because it's just been the way it has been for those two drivers. Have always not been best of friends, have been rivals, but we did say they could work together. But we had things like Australia where it was really difficult for them to keep out of each other's way. I just don't think there's any way of saving this from the position they're in. And as Wadjet has already said, Alpine have this way of dropping in and out every now and again. And I think we have Wadjet back now.
Hopefully that's done it.
Yes, we do. We do. We have him back now. As Wadjet said before, Alpine and Renault have this thing about hanging around and things like that. So I think they'll probably be gone as a team at some point, but who knows? That's for another day. We move on to any other standing news in terms of F1. The only thing I can think of is that Carlos Sainz hasn't made a decision yet. But his decisions seem to be getting less and less. Mercedes have kind of said over Monaco weekend they're not interested. Ferrari, no seats. It looks like Perez will get another year deal at Red Bull. It's a rumour at the moment. So he's going to have to drop quite far downfield to actually find himself a seat. We seem to have lost Wadjet again by the looks of things. So we've got Wadjet back, as you can see, and he is moving. Oh, look, it's not even pixelating or anything. It's brilliant. Sorry about that, but yeah. So for Carlos Sainz, it's very difficult at this moment in time. We're saying in terms of where he can go. Red Bull seem to be shutting the door. Mercedes seem to be shutting the door. Audi want an answer soon. He's going to have to fall quite far down this grid from what is one of the top teams in the Prancing Horse.
Excuse me. Yes, he is. And he's not. They're not going to get. For all intents and purposes, it sounds like Checo Perez has that second seat at Red Bull sewn up. I do not know why. I don't think any of us knows why. How he's secured that second seat, especially with Max maybe or maybe not being there, has me head scratching, and has a lot of us head scratching, to be honest. So that's gone. The Mercedes seat, who knows? I think he ends up at Audi, and I think a lot of drivers have the sort of Lewis Hamilton outlook sort of thing, which is they want to go to a team and be at the team and the new team at the right time to ride the wave. And Lewis did it with Mercedes. It seems like he's done it with Ferrari again for 2025 anyway, where it seems like they'll be challenging for the title next year. So Lewis is either the luckiest man in Formula One, or he has constant inside information that we don't know. But Danny Rick did it, failed. Alonso thought he hit the jackpot with the Astons last year. That's fallen off the wagon. So I guess it's Carlos's turn with Audi. I think he ends up at Audi next year.
Yeah. Going back to the Ocon story, I did find it quite interesting that we didn't have an announcement of Ocon wasn't ready to announce something and says he will be very, very shortly. But in terms of the whole scheme of things, you normally get a barrage of announcements. So Alpine and Esteban would agree to when they're going to be saying they're leaving. Then they'd obviously announce he was leaving. And then a few hours later, he'd announce what drive he'd got. That hasn't happened. So this isn't just to do with Monaco. We've been assured of that. But it's definitely looking like he may not have a seat next season quite easily. Could you see Esteban Ocon going elsewhere? I can't see IndyCar, for example, myself.
Well, it's got to be. It's got to be IndyCar. Otherwise, your career dies.
Would you really want Esteban Ocon and Santino Ferrucci on the same track?
It'll be fun, wouldn't it?
Well, it might be for one lap.
They'd find IndyCar to be at the forefront of safety features. I'll put it that way. If
maybe
he goes
in the same team, because Esteban only runs into his teammates.
That's true. If he goes, let's be honest. If he goes to Formula E, his career Formula One's dead. Formula E is the graveyard for Formula One drivers. I don't see him going to WEC unless he's given sort of like the Toyota LMP style car where he knows it. All he's got to do is show up and beat his teammate, because then he can run his teammate off the road to make sure he wins. So it'd have to be IndyCar. The thing is, I know Esteban has been unlucky with timing and things like that, but he's never the issue is he's never comprehensively beaten a teammate ever.
I also don't think he's ever helped himself, because I always look at if you remember when Racing Point became Racing Point, basically the first race they had no points, so went to Spa and down into Le Con for the first time. They were 4 wide, Perez on one side, Ocon on the other, and both Racing Points pulled out of the move. Now, into that corner, they could so easily been leading that race, gone on, won the first ever race, done a brawn. The car was quick enough that day, but they sat there going, we need points, we need to regain what we've got. If that wasn't Ocon or Perez, or that was a top driver, I think they would have made that move and possibly won that Spa Grand Prix. So, is Esteban Ocon good enough? Yes. Is he consistent enough? Not a chance. I think that's what you've got to say. I also think, like I said, I also think he's now developed the reputation of someone who is accident prone. Yeah, he has now. Yes, certainly.
You can say everything you like about, competitive teammates, but when you have is it 3 different teammates he's run into now?
He's running. Well, we could start a quick rundown between who Perez and Ocon haven't run into. That'd be quicker, because as teammates.
Yeah. So obviously, like Ocon, now Gasly. You can say Perez, Gasly. I'm sure he had a knock or two with Ricardo, with Alonso.
Yeah.
So, you do in the cost cap era of Formula One, where everything is managed to a T. The likes of, he's going to catch a stray bullet, but the likes of K-Mag and Ocon on the grid, they're not cost effective for teams anymore. Like, teams have to think whether a driver is worth the sort of damage and carnage they're going to come with. He's not in that. He's obviously not in the Lewis, Max upper echelon. He's not in the Leclerc, Sainz, Norris tier. He's just about in the Russell tier, the Russell Piastri tier, and even then, like, he's scraping at best. So when you're not as good as George Russell and Oscar Piastri. Bear in mind, I actually rate Piastri as a driver. I think Piastri's on the climb into that next tier of drivers, in my opinion. Are you really worth the risk?
Going back to actually, you mentioned K-Mag, and has seemed to have this attraction to drivers that they think are quick, and they could adapt to be calm as well. You think of their whole grid. They've had Grosjean, they've had K-Mag, they've had Esteban Gutierrez, they've had the rumor is Ocon coming in. Is this about the time where Haas need to say, yes, don't go sign Ocon? We need to prove that we can actually be a team, because we've proven we cannot calm these people down.
But then do you want a Matt Williams with Alex Albon as a genuine number 2?
Why would Alex Albon? I don't think Ocon's going to Williams.
No, I didn't say Alex Albon number 2. I said Ocon would be 2 at Williams, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, I don't think Ocon will be going to Williams. I think the best chance of Williams having a driver who's in Formula One right now in their car is Bottas or Sainz for me.
I think it's Bottas. I really think Sainz is going to that Audi side, but Sauber, Kick, Streak, Twitch, YouTube streaming, like whatever streaming platform they want to use that week. That's where I think Sainz is going.
Well,
I think if I was a betting man, I don't think Esteban Ocon's on the grid next year.
It does seem to be heading that way, especially considering he didn't have an announcement. But amazingly enough, we're going to stick with Formula One, obviously, but that is not the most complicated transfers of the century, of the week even, with MotoGP taking that handle over at Ducati, which is just unbelievable, but we'll go through that another day. We will move on now to the Canadian Grand Prix. Along the bottom will be your driver's points currently as they stand, and the constructors will pop up very shortly. But the Canadian Grand Prix held at the Circuit de Gilles Villeneuve. We've had this layout of Circuit de Gilles Villeneuve since 2002. That's a strange thing to come up on my comments, because I can't think what's really changed since 2002. But anyway, the pit lane did. The pit lane changed, yes. But last year, we've held the Grand Prix in Canada 58 times, first held in 1961, with the most wins of 7 for Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton. A really good stomping ground for Lewis Hamilton, claiming his first win in 2001. Most wins as a constructor, Ferrari, 14.
2007, not 2001.
2001? Why did I say 2000? I can't even remember what happened in the 2001 Canadian Grand Prix. 2007. Lewis would have liked to win it in 2001, but most wins for constructor Ferrari at 14, and the race length is 305 kilometers of 70 laps. Last year we had Max Verstappen on pole position, dominating. If I remember rightly, not the most exciting of races from Fernando Alonso, and then Lewis Hamilton creeping up onto the podium, just proving that. I think it was about the time Mercedes were really starting to get to grips with their ground effect car. Yeah, that went well. All in all, always an interesting Grand Prix in Canada. I was thinking of something we could do in the future, and actually it works perfectly with Canada. And I say the Canadian Grand Prix, and you say the first thing that comes into your head as a memory of it.
World Champions. That 1997 race where everyone seemed
99.
to find. Sorry, 99. Yeah, thank you. 1-1-0. The 99 race where everyone seemed to be finding the wall after the chicane. I think the 5 drivers, like went straight into the wall. I think that's my first memory. That's one of the most vivid memories of Canada, and the other one would be 2012 Jenson Button, turn 4, last on the last lap. Those are the two.
The the 60-hour fill-in by Crofty and Brundle.
Yeah.
Watching.
The Formula One's homage to WEC.
I will hold my hands up. I was on holiday when that happened in a caravan, and luckily it was tipping it down that day, so I did get to sit and watch it. But it's one of them where you kind of don't know what's going to happen. It always comes up with a surprise. You think back to 1995, John Lacey first win, the two Jordans joining him on the podium. We had a podium that Wirtz was on in 2008, I think I want to say, or 2007 in the Williams. 2007, I think it was, in the Williams, popped up on podium. You had Lewis Hamilton's first win. You had the first ever safety car finish in 1999 when Frenson's brakes failed. In 97, we had Panis's leg brake, which derailed Prost probably forever because they were in the title hunt to a point. We had
Danny Rick's first
win, yes.
When both Mercedes brake by wires failed or were partially failing. We had obviously the massive crash between that was the same race where Massa realized he couldn't get past Checo, so he thought he'd just go through the car instead.
Oh, overtake. Speaking of overtaking, Kubica,
Kubica's horrific crash and then going on to win it the next year. So
you also had 1998 where Jean Alesi and Jarno Trulli had a reprieve at the start, decided that they could get in their spare cars, and then literally out of two starts, the two drivers made it round one corner because they ended up on top of each other on the restart. Those two really did want to forget the 1998 Canadian Grand Prix. Alex Wirtz actually finished from fourth in that after his nice little barrel roll in the gravel. It's exciting. Things happen. You don't get a boring Canadian Grand Prix. Even if it's boring, the tarmac started peeling up one year. I think it's 2008, possibly.
Yeah, the days of spare cars. Do you remember those days? Jeez.
Yeah, really good idea. When you get a red flag. But it's a good job we had them in Spa '98, isn't it?
Well, I mean, 6 drivers still couldn't make the grid, though.
No, true. But,
and then,
the Canadian Grand Prix, always exciting. And
the final memory of Lewis forgetting, obviously being colorblind in the pits lane, and forgetting what a red light looks like, so he drove into the back of a red Ferrari instead.
I think that was clever by Lewis. I think he really. I honestly, I don't think it's ever been admitted, but he knew that the red light was on. He saw it was on, shall we say, at the last minute, too late. And then you have a pick, Ferrari, who might win the championship, or BMW, who, yes, at that time took championship lead, but you pretty much knew they weren't going to be in the championship hunt.
Because upgrading cars was illegal in Germany at that time.
Yeah, I don't know what they're thinking. But yeah, going back to Canada in general, always exciting, always something happening. Even the most boring of Grand Prix, or I say boring, I'm using the social media word for boring here. It's always something happens, or an unexpected result, or something like that will pop up. So do you think we're in for the same again? Because we're obviously looking at 3 teams going for a win at least.
Well, when we get to our predictions, I definitely think we're getting for a different type of race.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen them.
Yeah, so I'm hoping for some inclement weather. I'm hoping for something exciting. Like, to be honest, it's one of my favorite racetracks. I think this and Azerbaijan are what street circuits are supposed to be, which are, they're they are a circuit. They are, yeah, they're street tracks, but there's legitimate spots to overtake. There's excitement. It's challenging for the drivers. It's free flowing. It's fast, and it's just a shame that for some reason we're going back to Canada when the European season started, and we can't go later on because of sort of weather and things like that. But no, I think it's going to be an interesting race this weekend. Clearly,
yeah. If we had Canada at any other time of the year, it'll either be extremely wet or snowing. So it is a little bit of a time-consumed race, but it's always been held on the next to the rowing lake. Sadly, we don't seem to have the riverboat race anymore between the teams, which always was quite fun. And Jordan always seemed to do well at that. If only they put that concentration into their car. But they always seem to do well at that riverboat race, winning it out the first attempt, actually, in 1991. Last year we had... I was on about surprises. Nico Hulkenberg was meant to be on front row last year in the Haas before he got a free place penalty. So it just shows how crazy this race can be. We're going into sort of... Well, we've been in silly season since before the start of the season now. And we're in for a bit of a silly Grand Prix. 345,000 people attended over three. Gone to the island. I'm surprised the island didn't sink with that many people on it because it's not exactly the biggest parkland
it's
in the
not
world.
the biggest parkland. I was literally about to say it's not the biggest place in the world.
Isn't it where they park on the other side of the river and walk across almost a floating platform to get to the paddock? So
that's the one.
It's going to be a really interesting race. But what we're going to do now is move on to predictions. Now, we've got to always remember that the Canadian Grand Prix can and often is either red flagged or safety card. So that comes into our predictions a little bit as well. So first up, we've got some new graphics. Which will be good. I've just got to press the right one. We will disappear, but we are still here. So all behave because we can still see you. That sounds kind of weird. Here we go. That was Wajid banging the table, not my graphics coming up. Because if you watch, it doesn't make that noise this time. As you can see, there is our qualifying predictions. Wajid, do you want to talk us through yours?
I don't trust the Red Bull being able to sort of drive over the high curbs. I think the track is shit for some reason. I keep wanting to say Mercedes. The McLaren is very good in the sort of mid high speed corners, which is what Canada is all about. Leclerc, I mean, his qualifying record is his qualifying record over one lap. He is blisteringly quick. And then, I do think it's going to be, for qualifying anyway, I do think it's going to be the usual suspects challenging for pole. And I think Checo's going to be nowhere, just like you.
What you say now? Be nowhere. I'm not planning to race, mate. In terms of my top five for qualifying, obviously Leclerc's qualifying record speaks for itself. Verstappen's does. The McLaren's look strong at this moment in time, and Sainz is probably the next strongest combination out there with the situation at Ferrari. I wanted to say Mercedes might come back, but they just don't seem to have qualifying pace. They may have very good race pace, or decent race pace, shall we say, but they just don't have qualifying pace at all. So, moving on to our next bit, and again, same graphic. You've seen this before, just a bit of editing. There we go. That is our race predictions. And Majid, again, we'll go with you first. Hamilton for the victory?
Yeah, it's supposed to rain in Montreal on Sunday, quite heavily.
Oh, you didn't tell me that before we put our predictions down.
That's the research aspect. It's supposed to rain in. It's supposed to be a wet race weekend in Montreal this weekend. So I still think Lewis Hamilton is the best wet weather driver, bias or not, on the grid. And I think both Red Bulls are going to run into problems. Well, Perez is a driving problem anyway. Perez doesn't like driving in the rain anyway. I just think, I don't know. For me, that Red Bull does not seem as invincible as it did last year. Norris, again, an amazing wet weather driver, and then it's sort of as you were further down. But I don't know. It's Canada. It's inclement weather. It's one of Lewis's favorite tracks. I think he'd equal his own record of the most race wins by a driver at a single circuit if he did win this weekend.
Yeah, I think possibly would.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just I don't know. I'm just going with the gut. Mercedes loved screwing me my predictions last year, so why not give them the benefit of the doubt at one of Lewis's favorite tracks? And if they do me over again, then
Well,
fool on me.
Yeah. For me, I've gone for a Norris victory. That McLaren's very quick and quicker than Ferrari on a race pace. I feel like, especially for Norris. Looking at my results, I'm not sure quite why Piastri has disappeared out of the top 5 from the qualifying, but he has. And the 2 Red Bulls obviously struggling with full-on pace. 4th and 5th I don't think would be a terrible result for them, especially if Leclerc wasn't the guy winning, because he's the closest in the championship. And Hamilton, we know his prowess around Canada, and we know how he will compete in terms of a race result, if not a qualifying result. So that is our predictions for the Grand Prix, and certainly something that is worth staying up. Well, I'm saying staying up for. It's not that late. I mean, for those who used to be watching on ITV, we'll all remember the little caption scrolling on the bottom saying Coronation Street will be on in a few moments' time. That's always used to be how it was in Canada. But
it used to be amazing
that's our short little preview for everybody. We have kept it short. It's only 32 minutes long, so there's a first for us. We would take a bow on that one. Wajid, thank you for joining us for the Grand Prix preview.
Well, thank you for having me as always. And sorry, I mean, obviously, it's the last time I say thanks to Virgin Media again.
Yeah, certainly one which we will be sending to Mr. Branson and asking him to sort that out. It's a good job he doesn't do planes, isn't it? I mean, they'd just be... Oh, hang on. Right. Off we go. It's a Canadian Grand Prix, everybody, and it's always going to be exciting. So enjoy. It is on Sunday evening here in the UK. So normally about 5 or 6 o'clock will be the flag time. So I think Wadge just checking that one out. So you can normally watch it before it goes to bed.
7 o'clock. 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock race start. So you'll be able to watch it before you go to bed, unless Jensen Button decides he wants to. Well, it can only be up to 4 hours now. So we're okay. We're okay there. So we can get that one done. But thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Just remember, please, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and hopefully we can push the channel further on. Goodbye.